Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Eshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Avanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare What's happening? No sound on what? On the gizmo. Something like that, yeah. We'll take a look at it. Yeah, I think that's right. It's 2.2.23, correct? Yogeshvaranam gatimahurantar. Yogeshvaranam gatim ahurantar. Bahis trilokya pavanantaratmanam. Bahis trilokya pavanantaratmanam. Na karma vistam gatim apnuvanti. Na karma bistam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Yogeshvaranam gatim ahurantar. Bahis trilokya pavanantaratmanam. Na karma bistam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Yogeshvaranam gatim ahurantar. Bahistrilokya pavanantar atmanam. Na karma vistam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Yogeshvaranam gatim ahurantar. Bahistrilokya pavanantaratmanam. Na karma vistam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Yogeshvaranam gatim ahurantar. Bahistrilokya pavanantaratmanam. Na karma bistam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. Yoga Ishvaranam. Of the great saints and devotees. Gatim, destination. Ahu, it is said. Antaha, within. Bahihi, without. Trilokyaha, of the three planetary systems. Pavana antaha, within the air. Atmanam, of the subtle body. Na, achieve. Vidya, devotional service. Tapaha, austerities. Yoga, mystic power. Samadhi, knowledge. Bhajam, those who entertain. The translation reads, the transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers, or the gross materialists, can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So I say, and you all please repeat, the transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body, and as such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers, or the gross materialists, can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So here is the purport. The materialistic scientists' endeavor to reach other planets by mechanical vehicles is only a futile attempt. One can, however, reach heavenly planets by virtuous activities, but one can never expect to go beyond Svarga or Janalok by such mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. The transcendentalists, who have nothing to do with the gross material body, can move anywhere within or beyond the material worlds. Within the material worlds, they move in the planetary system of Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satyalok. And beyond the material worlds, they can move in the Vaikunthas as unrestricted spacemen. Narada Muni is one of the examples of such spacemen. And Durvasa Muni is one of such mystics. By the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. It is said that Durvasa Muni traveled throughout the entirety of material space and part of the spiritual space within 1 year only. The speed of the transcendentalists can never be attained by gross or subtle materialists. Yogeshvaranam gatirahuranta bahistrilokya pavanantaratmanam na karmabhistam gatimapnuvanti vidyatapo yoga samadhi bhajam. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body as such. By the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers, or the gross materialists, can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So, one of the main themes here is that the more in tune you are with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the less restriction is placed upon you. And that's a very simple equation. that if you're very much in harmony with the Supreme, then essentially you can go anywhere, into places that are dangerous, into places that are restricted, into places where generally nobody goes. You are not hampered to go anywhere. And this is because those who do not misuse their independence have nothing to fear, and others have nothing to fear from them, because those who do not misuse their independence are free. So the opposite is also true, that for those who are quite prone to misuse their independence and try to lord it over the material world, they find themselves at war with everything. And they find their movements quite restricted. And it's natural. That's just the way the material world works. If we just look around, it's quite plain that the different locations, even in our world, are designed for entities with very different kinds of karma. For instance, we cannot live underneath the ocean. Of course, we can be underneath the ocean for some time if we have scuba gear or something like that, or a diving apparatus that pumps pressurized air down to our helmet. That's possible. But we cannot actually live underwater the way the fish can. The fish don't need a diving outfit. They don't need scuba gear. They naturally live in the water. And on the other side of the coin, if we flip that, the fish can't live out on the land the way we do either. They will perish. So the material world is divided into such locations with specific characteristics to more or less force the living entities to live in a particular place according to their karma. So even on this earth, if you were born in the United States, even if both of your parents were neither one of them a United States citizen, if you were just born in the United States, you were considered an American citizen. So that's the way that things work, that there are many people in third world countries which would do anything to come and live in the United States. But because they don't have the right karma, they don't have the right passport, they can't satisfy the border agents of the United States, then they can't do what they want to do. And so this isn't just the United States, this is the way the whole universe is designed. If you look, even if we accept our modern understanding of space and the, mission to leave our planet, it's quite plain too that it's as if every possible barrier is there to stop us from leaving this planet. The gravity is so intense that it costs enormous amounts of money just to get a spacecraft lifted off the face of the Earth and into orbit, what to speak of to another planet. The way that physics works, some ridiculous proportion of a rocket ship is its fuel. So, something like 90% of the whole weight of one of these Atlas or whatever kind of rockets they use now. They have constantly evolved into different kinds, and now mostly the United States uses Russian rocketry to get off the planet. So the cost of the fuel is incredible. The danger is high, and it takes, a huge rocket just to get a handful of people and a little bit of cargo up there in outer space. Once they're up there, then there's also dangers. We discovered, the mission that came back, they had two twins, two male twins, and that way they could tell how the body reacted to space, because one twin didn't go up and the other one did. And just by being in space for close to a year or somewhere thereabouts, the twin that was in space lost a lot of muscle mass and bone mass, and became debilitated by the low gravity of outer space. So the fact that there's not the right gravity, that the air has to be constantly recycled, there's no way to bring up a lot of food, so they have to eat some kind of pasty stuff that's designed especially for it. There's radiation, that's why we can't go very far in outer space. So everywhere there is one barrier after another. And, they say that if we went to Mars, first of all, it's cold. Secondly, the gravity is 1/6 of what it is here on Earth, or something like that. Or the atmosphere is too thin. So to live on another planet would require enormous amounts of special arrangements. So it's as if the material universe is demanding that we stay put, that we don't travel somewhere. But we were reading yesterday that those who know and practice the yoga system, especially the Satchak yoga, they are able, through either mystic power or through projecting themselves out of their bodies in one of those two ways, they can travel anywhere they want. And again, this is the main theme of Prabhupada's book called Easy Journey to Other Planets, that for those who are advanced spiritually, they can go anywhere they want in the material world. They can use their mystic power to travel. Prabhupada describes that yogis can go down in one river and come up in another river, and even that other river can be on a different planet. So somehow or other, mystic yogis can travel like this. And yesterday we were hearing that the residents of the higher planetary systems, they have no problem in going from one planet to another in an instant with no rocket ship, no space helmet or space suit, with no, expensive propellant, with no fear of losing bone mass, with no special arrangements for food. They don't need any of that. They can just go from one planet to another. And if the arrangements on that planet are the kind that would be difficult for the bodies that we have, they can just take a different body. From Vedic knowledge, we learn that there are beings even on the sun. We certainly couldn't live there. But there are people who live there. And the nature of the type of body one requires to live in a different environment is a different type of body. But those who are quite pure are not restricted in this way. They can travel anywhere. So this is why this particular purport Prabhupada discusses Narada Muni. He discusses Durvasa Muni, who can travel everywhere. We found that Durvasa Muni was visiting Ambarish Maharaj, and Ambarish was supposed to break a fast, but Durvasa Muni was taking his time, and so Ambarish was nearing the point where his fast would have been ineffectual if he had not broken it. So he asked his advisors, and they agreed that just drinking water was equivalent to breaking and at the same time not breaking a fast. So he just did that. He drank some water. Durvasa Muni became incensed and cursed him. But because Ambarish was actually devotional, he was a devotee, and Durvasa Muni was not, he was just a very powerful Muni or yogi, then the curse basically backfired. He found himself being chased by the Sudarshan Chakra of the Supreme Lord. And he went everywhere. He went to various planets. He went to try to beg help from Vishnu, from Shiva, from various other illustrious demigods, and no one could help him. He was advised finally by Vishnu that if he actually wanted to have relief from the Sudarshan Chakra, he would never be able to outrun it. But what he could do is ask forgiveness from Ambarish, and if he asked forgiveness and received it from Ambarish, then certainly the Sudarshan Chakra would no longer follow him. So this shows how, for a person like Durvasa Muni, who is just a Muni, he could travel. The demigods can certainly travel from one planet to another with no difficulty. And many others can also, the Charnas, the Vidyadharas, and so many other classes of being that are above in their category of karma to human beings. So there are so many types of living entities that are superior to the human classification. And they can travel anywhere they want. They don't need to feel restricted. And again, the reason why they can is because they have demonstrated their cooperation with the Vedic system by either learning the yogic processes or learning some mystic potency or becoming a devotee where the Supreme Lord does not restrict their motion. Again, we have the story of the four Kumaras who were young boys, and they had heard about the Supreme Lord having form. So they wanted to find out about this form of the Supreme Lord, and they went to the gates of Vaikuntha. Now, you and I are normal beings with regular karma, could never just go there, even if you had a rocket ship. It's too far away. And you would be restricted physically from entering that realm. Even the higher heavenly planets, we could not enter with spacecraft. But what to speak of those places, if we talk about the Vaikuntha worlds, which is where the four Kumaras went, we would be stopped by the gatekeepers, as we see that Jaya and Vijay did in fact stop the four Kumaras. And they became a little bit angry by the fact that they were prevented, because generally speaking they assumed, according to their purity, that they should have been allowed into Vaikuntha, and by all rights they should have been allowed. And so as a result their anger was vented by passing a curse against Jaya and Vijay, and they had to come take birth on the earth plane for having restricted the four Kumaras. So when someone is playing by the rules, when somebody is focused on the Supreme Lord, then such a person presents no danger or offense to anyone, and as a result the doors of the universe are wide open to such a person. culture is preoccupied with traveling in outer space. It's quite a theme on our modern Earth. There's so many movies about traveling to the stars. We have so many science fiction, not only just single movies, but whole syndicated groupings of movies that explore that theme. And they assure us that one day we will be flying between the galaxies and going to visit all kinds of planets light years away. Even though, again, another barrier is, according to our modern understanding of science, that to travel to the nearest star would take a ship thousands of years to get there. So another type of barrier. There is this desire to visit these other planets. And in one place in the purport in Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Prabhupada said, the day may come where the residents of this planet do in fact visit other worlds. But we can see how expensive, how cumbersome, how dangerous it is. And we can understand that the reason people are visiting other planets is just to materially enjoy and to capture resources. So the expansion of humans from this Earth planet is not in a way to be harmonious with the universe any more than we are harmonious with the Earth. The purpose of humans traveling to other planets is to lord it over those other planets. So naturally, with that kind of a motivation, the universe will respond by throwing up countless obstacles. So we've got competition here. Anyway, spiritual life is simple, and if we had such a desire to visit other planets, then surely Krishna would fulfill it in some way, like he did for Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni, I know as a child, I was fascinated with space travel. I thought, one of these days I'll be an astronaut. Of course, it's interesting how some of these childhood desires just kind of go by the wayside. I have absolutely no interest in being an astronaut anymore. I think it would be boring. I think, that if anything, we could call space the big nothing, that you would be, as, those songs go, there's a couple of popular songs about it, you'd be cramped in a tin can, and it would be boring most of the time, and you would barely be able to move, it would be very uncomfortable. But if one really did have the inclination to travel in space and one was a devotee, then certainly Krishna would fulfill such a desire. And you could be a Narada Muni or a Durvasa Muni, and Narada Muni can go anywhere. He can go even to the spiritual Vaikuntha plane if he wants. And he can do this at will. There are many stories of Durvasa Muni traveling so many places. And, it was kind of a joke that in the early days of the movement, everybody considered Durvasa Muni the transcendental spaceman. He was seen as a transcendental spaceman traveling anywhere and everywhere. But why was he traveling? He wasn't going as a tourist. He wasn't going to see what kind of minerals were available on various asteroids that could be mined for some financial profit. He was going to preach to people. So he would preach in the heavenly planets, he would preach on the earth plane, he would preach in so many locations. So this is Narada Muni. He can go anywhere, and his purpose is preaching. Let me stop because we've got 15 minutes here and see if there are any questions or realizations about this particular verse. I didn't get a chance to prepare because I didn't know I was giving class, but you know, it's not a bad verse, and it's very, it's kind of got a lot of interesting tangents that can be explored. Any questions or realizations? Yes, Nard Rishiji.
Prabhupada says the time of Pralaya, the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, they automatically go to the birth of the planets.
Well, I think some of them do. I don't know if all of them do. I think even in, Brahmlok, one has to be devotionally inclined. One can make it to, I think, even Brahmlok without necessarily being a devotee. So in that case, one would have to take birth again somewhere else.
He says, even the Brahma has to die.
Right.
But then again he says, time of Pralaya, including Brahma, the inhabitants of Brahmaloka. He says like this.
Who says?
Prabhupada in his purport.
Which?
He says, including Brahma, the inhabitants of Brahmaloka, they go to work on the planet, time of Pralaya. So he says like this. Only he says Brahmaloka, not other.
Right. Maybe so. I don't know. I have.
One of the purports is Brahmaloka.
In Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
Can you find it for me? When, not right now, but sometime in the near future. Because I've also heard that in our particular universe, Brahma is a devotee, a pure devotee. But that is not universally true. That many other universes, the Brahma is not a pure devotee. So I can't imagine how he would go back to the spiritual world if that's the case. You had a question?
Yes.
Divyangi?
Thank you so much for this class. I read that Srila Prabhupada in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they said that moon is a heavenly planet.
That's right.
How can we see it if
It looks like a rock with a bunch of holes in it, right? Yeah. How could it be a heaven?
Can you see the heavenly planets?
What's that?
Can you see the heavenly planets?
I don't think so. Prabhupada was asked one time if they went to the moon, and he said no. But he said that they might have gone somewhere. And the thing that we see may just be some aspect of the moon, not the entirety of the moon, As we are discussing today, that the material world is off limits to people with material mentality, So people with a material mentality will be necessarily blocked, not only physically, but possibly even visually from understanding a thing the way it is, If you have some very wealthy man and he has a penthouse on the top of a building here in New York City somewhere, you're not going to be able to see in his windows. He's going to put some kind of blinders there. So I think something similar, some kind of cloaking mechanism or obscuring mechanism is there that keeps, materially motivated mundaners from being able to appreciate or witness what the demigods are doing. It may be in another dimensional aspect or something like that, or it may be some other cloaking mechanism that keeps us from being able to see it. To us, it looks like a rock with a bunch of holes in it. But, at the same token, by analogy, if you were going to look at the penthouse window of some rich, famous person, you'd just probably see a blind, which would not be very interesting. Similar kind of thing. So maybe that's it. Maybe there's some other thing, but that's the way I usually think about it. That our space that we see, or that's currently understood in the context of our modern scientific paradigm, is only an aspect of what's actually going on. What's actually going on is much more intricate. And even the scientists find that the more you study anything in the material world, the more complex it gets, because everything is that way in the material world, that it looks a certain way, and as you approach it and get closer and study it more, it becomes obvious that it's more complex than you thought it was at first. So there are these subtle aspects and possibly higher dimensional aspects of the universe that we live in that are not so easily seen by our material senses. Now, since our culture is so oriented towards materialism, then they're missing a whole aspect of the world. They just miss it. Again, as we see that the more mundane you are, the more selfish you are, the more materialistic you are, the more restricted you are, not only in where you can go, but also in what you can see. If somebody comes into this room and they've drank, a fifth of vodka, their vision will be certainly very restricted. They may not even notice the deities, They might even, because we see as you're more and more absorbed in the modes, in the lower modes, what you see and where you can go is much more restricted. Whereas a person who begins the process of Krishna consciousness gradually discovers more and more that the world is open to them. Their senses perceive more than what other people's senses perceive, because they are in tune with the reality of things. And so that's just a natural phenomenon. This verse is pointing out that phenomenon, that not only, I would say not only is a living being restricted because of their mundane consciousness, but also their sensory ability to understand the world is similarly restricted. And that's why when atheists see no reason to believe in a God, I believe that they're telling the truth, That doesn't mean there is no God. It just means that because of their own clouded mentality, just as when a drunk person doesn't understand what the right thing is to do in a particular situation because they're drunk, I believe that that's genuinely the way that they perceive and act, but it isn't that it doesn't have anything to do with their consciousness or with their, having taken alcohol. That's what affects it. So in a similar way that the more moded you are, the less you understand, the less you perceive, the less you're in tune, the less you are able to walk freely in the material world. Similarly, if somebody acts very aggressively in our modern world, eventually the police come and take them away. And again, they're restricted. They wind up in a jail cell somewhere, another kind of restriction. So this is just the natural functioning of the universe. And it exists on many levels, but I think very few people think about it or make the connection between these things, that through engaging in devotional service towards being unselfish, doors are open. And through being materialistic, being very selfish, being motivated, as Prabhupada says, by wanting to lord it over the material world, doors are closed. It's just the natural way the universe works. People work that way, society works that way, the material energy works that way, the modes of nature work that way, and the restrictions to travel to other planets also work that way. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Karuna Avatar.
Yeah, based on what Prabhu was saying, I too read, I don't know if it's Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam or Bhagavad Gita. It said like residents from Brahma-loka, at the time of the dissolution, they go up to the Vaikuntha planet. But I'm very well about it because if from Brahma-loka you could go to Vaikuntha planet, might as well stay in Brahma-loka.
Well, right, but he's talking about at the pralaya, when there is destruction of the entire material universe. You can't stay in Brahmaloka because there ain't no Brahmaloka. Or Jyoti. So I'm not sure about that too. That the Brahma Jyoti always exists, but there's some connection between Brahmaloka and the Brahma Jyoti. It's never been exactly clear to me. But those in Brahmaloka are very advanced. They're the most advanced in the universe. From a spiritual, mystical achievement point of view, they may not be the most advanced devotees, because if they were, why are they in Brahmaloka? Why didn't they go back to the spiritual world? You know, so there's some kind of thing like that. Now, Brahma's there for a reason. He's there because he has to manage the material universe. But the others who are in Brahmaloka, what is their motivation for staying there and not taking the next step up to Vaikuntha, leaving the material world altogether? There must be some attraction for something there, but what that is, I don't know. All right, so we will end here. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Narada Rishi is still researching, and maybe we'll hear from him later today. I'm not debating that it might not say that somewhere, but I'd just like to read it because there's a couple of questions that arise if we assume that they automatically go from Brahmaloka to the Vaikuntha planets when there is a full destruction of the universes. Okay. All glories to Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. All glories to Radha Govinda Dev. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.